Today I'm going to talk to you about the prompt sheet, how to read it closely to get a good understanding of the topic, and how to also use it to get ideas for the essay. You can see it has an overall look to it. It's broken up into sections. Each of those sections has a specific purpose. I'm going to take a look at each of them quickly, and then we will focus most of our attention on the actual writing task or prompt, which is really what I'm going to call the meat of the prompt sheet. Up at the top, you'll notice there's a reading overview. That's going to give you a preview of all the different things we're going to read throughout the course of the assignment. So I know sometimes people look at that and think, wow, that's a lot to read, but keep in mind, we're not going to read it all in one night. We're going to read it spread out over the 3 or 4 weeks we might spend working on the particular essay. The section background is also useful. This is where I really try to explain my thinking as I was putting this topic together, some of the ideas that came into my mind. I'm sort of thinking out loud in this section, just trying to give you a sense of what I have in mind about the overall topic in general. And then we get down to the writing task in the third section, which is the prompt. Always going to include the prompt you have to address, and any other requirements that need to be in the essay are going to be listed there too. You'll see that I put a lot of items in blue, trying to call your attention to the sort of minimal requirements of the content of the essay. And then at the bottom, of course, you'll have the due date and the minimum length. You can go over. People always ask me, well, can I write 3 pages? Yes, of course you can write 3 pages. Make the essay as long as it needs to be, right? And this is the only essay we'll write that will not have a works cited page, because we only have the one source really that we're working with, my semester with the snowflakes. Okay, let's take a look at the prompt more closely. The first thing you need to do is read it super carefully, and read it more than once. Read it 2 or 3 times. If you've printed out the paper, which I suggest you do if you have the ability to do that, write on it. Circle important words. Circle important instruction. Take notes of any words you don't understand. Make sure you understand every single word before you move on. I'm going to take a look at each of these sections very, very carefully. So the most important part of that section is, of course, the actual prompt. Here, keeping in mind such factors as your age, background, or interests. Let's pause on that for a minute. Keeping in mind such factors, this is not an all-inclusive list. There are more things you could talk about besides age, background, and interests. So if you think of something that doesn't fit well into this list, don't dismiss it out of hand. You may be able to use it. You'll find out what I think of it as you submit some of the homework assignments about the topic you're going to write about. The next part, explain, right? Always look for the verb. Explain how your unique experiences may help or hinder your academic progress. So really we're trying to do a similar essay to Hatch's essay. Hatch explained how his own opinion of himself, his assumptions about the other students at Yale, how all these things impacted, at first, how he thought he would do in class. Now he learned he was wrong, luckily. But your experience is going to be your own experience. It's unique to you, your previous experience in school, your background, how well you've done in the past, for example. And all these things are going to influence how well you do and any problems you anticipate you might have. So what about you specifically is going to help you do well in this class or in school in general? And what do you think is going to get in your way? That's really what hinder means. What's going to stop you? What's going to hinder you? What's going to make it more difficult for you compared to the average student? And we're going to get into detail about that in this essay. Now, the second part of the prompt gives you some specific ideas about things, again, you could do. You do not always have to do them. The parts in blue that I noted before, those are things you have to do. But whenever I say you may use, that means you don't have to. You could, but you don't have to. If you think of something else that suits your purposes better, feel free to use that. But one of the things we learned from reading is how to put writing together that is successful. So if we think about things that Hatch does when he tells stories and when he doesn't, these are all techniques he uses to sort of win us to his side, to help us also understand his viewpoint, right? So, for example, he talks about how he's different from the other students first, right? So he focuses on what's different. But as he works through the essay, he ends up pointing out how actually they're very similar. They have a lot of things in common. He's surprised by this. So he sort of turns his whole experience into a learning experience. That's a great way to start. What did you get wrong at first, and how did you learn to fix it? That's basically what he's doing there. Now you'll notice at the end of this section it says, use or respond to at least one detail from Hatch's essay which is required. So that's different from may. If it's required, you need to do it. But it's only one because I don't want you to talk exclusively about Hatch's essay. The essay you're writing should focus mostly on your own experience, but make sure you bring in at least one detail from Hatch's essay. It could be some way in which you're completely different from him, or it could be some way in which you feel the same. Now, in the spirit of our book, They Say, I Say, we want to start with his voice, Hatch's essay. That's your they say voice for this essay. And so we're going to assume our audience, our readers, have not read Hatch's essay. And so your introduction should give us a really brief summary of what that essay was basically about, so that a reader will have an accurate picture of your they say voice before you go on to either agree with it, state you have a similarity with it, or state you have something very different in your own experience. Now, how long should that be? Probably not the entire introductory paragraph, but I think you could do it in anywhere from 1 to 3 sentences, approximately. That's just advice, that's not a rule, but that way you have room in your introduction for some other thoughts, as well as your thesis statement. I hope this helps you understand how to read my prompt sheet. Let me know if you have any questions.